Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
1957, Rockwell, Maine. From the black void of outer space, a massive metal robot crash lands on Earth, sent by a distant civilization unknown to humankind. And as Hogarth Hughes, America's luckiest kid, has a chance encounter with a mysterious extraterrestrial visitor, an obsessed US government agent embarks on a time-sensitive mission to capture the sentient android at all costs. With fear and prejudice creeping up on the neighborhood, is young Hogarth prepared to fight for his beliefs, protect his home, and save the Iron Giant. Iron Giant, 1999. Howdy beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, me, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well, hope you're good, as per usual. As you heard in that wonderful new intro plot summary that I did, today's episode is going to be about the 1999 animated cult classic and most dear to my heart, The Iron Giant. But before we get into that, for the first time of season 3, I've got to do some housekeeping. So, because I like to keep my house so nice and clean, make sure that you follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on anything that I am doing. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That will help me out absolutely wonderfully, and I'll be much appreciated. So, welcome to Season 3 of the Nerdstalgic podcast. Welcome to today's today's episode, where we're talking about the Iron Giant. First thing I want to do before we get into it, I want to wish everyone a happy new year and thank you all for coming back and sticking with me. The funny thing that I noticed while I've been on my break is that while I've been off, my old episodes have really gone up and loads of people are listening to them. Now, I don't know if that's me being big-headed and thinking that people miss me, so people are listening to my older stuff, or people are catching up. I don't know what it is, but if you're one of those people that went back and listened to all my older stuff, thank you very, very much. It means a lot. So, I do want to talk about that. You're probably wondering as to why I'm back, even though I said I'm going to be on a break, and what this means. First of all, I want to say the reason that I've decided to do this episode is because it is a special episode, because it is my birthday. The day this episode comes out will be the 20th of Jan, which is the Sunday, which is my birthday, and I'll be 26 years old. So I wanted to do it because not only being my birthday, but also this movie means a lot to me. And as we will come to talk about it in a minute, it's going to be... It was a movie that I wanted to talk about last year, and it's a movie that I've wanted to talk about since I started up the podcast. But it's a film like Jack Frost that is just the cornerstone of my being, of my life, of my existence. So this was a film that I thought, definitely for my 26th birthday, this is the movie that I want to talk about, and I want to be the beginning of season 3. So that's reason number 1, because it's my birthday. Reason number 2, I hit a huge milestone in the book that I'm currently writing, right? For anybody who doesn't know, because I don't think I've actually written it, or wrote it, shall I say, on Twitter. But recently, as recording this, I hit a huge milestone with the book that I'm currently writing, my first ever novel. I managed to finish the middle of the story. So the beginning and the middle are done, complete. I've still got to go back and do some proofreading to make sure that, grammarly and it all makes sense, and all the spelling mistakes, because I'm dyslexic, they're all fixed. But it's done. It's finished. What that means is that I now have the end of the story to write. And if I'm smart enough and clever enough, I already know where I've got to go and how to get there. So my goal from now is to hopefully, by the middle to end of February, have it done. If it's done before that, wunderbar, fantastic. If not, a bit of a bummer. But that is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming to get the book done by February, and then Hopefully, then I'll be back doing podcasting sort of full time, a lot like I was last year, and then hopefully look for publishing and people to proofread it, and then to send sort of test copies out, and hopefully get the book published. So, kind of the two big things: my birthday, and because I hit a huge milestone with the book that I'm currently writing, as a gift to myself and to you all, I wanted to talk about one of my all-time favorite animated movies. I feel like it was the perfect time, really. And what better to start season three off with a cult classic like The Iron Giant? Um, as I said, this movie, I could gush about this movie so much. I could gush all day, every day about it. But I'm not going to, because I'm going to leave that for a section in a minute. One thing that I do want to talk about first, I want to talk about the book by Ted Hughes. Now, I've read the book. I did own it at one stage, but I gave it away at a charity shop, and yeah, it was a long time ago, so I don't remember a lot about it. I know that it was written by Ted Hughes, and it came out in 1968. And from doing a quick sort of Wikipedia search, which you'd never use Wikipedia as a source, but for what it says here, so the Iron Man, it's called, not called the Iron Giant, um, is a children's story in 5 nights. Is a 1968 science fiction novel by British poet Ted Hughes, first published by Faber and Faber in the UK, with illustrations by George Adamson. Described by some as a modern fairy tale, it narrates the unexpected arrival in England of a giant metal man of unknown origin who rains destruction on the countryside by eating industrial farm equipment before befriending a small boy and defending the world from a dragon from outer space. Expanding the narrative beyond a criticism of warfare and interhuman conflict, Hughes later wrote a sequel, The Iron Woman, in 1993, describing retribution based on environmental themes related to pollution. Haven't read The Iron Woman, but from what I can remember of my time with the Iron Giant, the Iron Man, the original story, I enjoyed it. It gets a bit weird when you start bringing a space dragon into it, and if I remember correctly, it was sung under the lines of the space dragon comes down, the Iron Giant goes, "Well, I can outdo you in an eating contest," and they basically eat and eat and eat as much as possible. And I can't remember the rest. It was something along the lines of then. It's a short story. It's not very long. It is generally for kids. It's a very short story. But I just wanted to talk about it first because I just found it quite interesting. But like I did own it at one stage, but I kind of got rid of it because I had no more room. But yes, the movie was inspired by a book by Ted Hughes called The Iron Man from 1968. Now, this is where I'm going to start gushing over this film. This is the part where I'm going to talk about my love for this movie. As I mentioned, like Jack Frost, this was a movie that I watched every single day. I had it on video, I had it on DVD. This movie came out a year later, so I was about 1 year old when this film came out, so I was very impressionable. It was just one of them films that just pulled me in, and again, it hit me in the heartstrings. At a very young age, I cried because the giant, spoilers, dies at the end. And it was such a wonderful story, and I can't explain it because again, the themes in this movie, it's not really for a child of a young age that I was, but I just felt something in this film, and I cried when the giant died because it was so lovely. He was a lovely giant, and he died, and it was sad. So I have a huge love for this film, and it's only grown since I've gotten older. My room, if you could see it, I have posters around my room in frames on the wall of the Iron Giant. So go back a bit because I've got a bit farther ahead. I own, right, this is a box in my hand. You can't see it sadly, but maybe you can hear it. In my hand, I hold a box, and it is the Iron Giant Signature Edition. What that means is that I get a few lovely collectibles. This wasn't cheap. This was a collectible. So this was for collectors. Okay. In this box, you get a huge piece of paper which was written by Brad Bird and signed by Brad Bird. And I'll read that in a minute. Also, you have an envelope which is full. Well, was, shall we say, was full of art prints and posters of the Iron Giant. They are movie posters, they are just sketches, they are bits of the Giant and Hogarth and stuff like that. Early concept art. I absolutely love. I've got them framed around my room because, again, I love this movie to bits. This is my all-time favorite animated movie. Ice Age, great, love it, but it holds nothing on how much I love the Iron Giant. It's stuck with me for my whole life. Also, you have a huge booklet which is full to the brim of behind-the-scenes sketches of Brad Bird in action. The whole idea of what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun. Director Brad Bird posed this question to the studio executives. In his effort to answer that question, Bird would create a beloved story of friendship, courage, and humanity, all of which springs from the soul of something far from human. And then how to build a giant, and they talked about how they actually went about the different designs and the different looks of how the giant was look. I wish I was on camera so I could show all these off. They had the voice talent and all the different. It's absolutely gorgeous, right? It's a huge booklet full of it. You also get a small miniature giant figure, which I have on my desk, and you get the Blu-ray version, the signature edition of the Iron Giant, which comes with you got the Iron Giant theoretical edition, which is the edition that came out in theaters, as well as you get the Giant's dream sequence commentary by director Brad Bird, which I've listened to. It's fantastic. Head of animation Tony, this is the story department head Jeff Lynch, Giant animation supervisor Steve Mazaki, deleted scenes, vintage featurettes, and motion gallery. Also, with the signature edition, all the sort of scenes that were taken out in the original version are added back in. And the signature version is the all-time, is like Blade Runner when you watch the director's cut and people say that's the version of Blade Runner you want to watch. The signature version is the version of Iron Giant you want to watch because it adds in extra scenes, which I will talk about when I get to the review. But it adds in scenes that really flush out the giant as a character. It flushes out the giant's backstory, and once you know a little bit more about the giant's backstory, you understand that development, that whole idea of a gun not wanting to finding out that it's a weapon and that it can harm people, and realizing I don't want to harm anybody. I want to be Superman. I want to be a hero. So that edition is the absolute pinnacle and my absolute favorite. As for the big sort of piece of paper that comes with it, that was written by Brad Bird, it says feature animation, which had been waning since Walt Disney's death in 1966, experienced a huge rebirth in the early 90s when the Disney studios began succeeding wildly with 2D animation films of familiar tales done as Broadway-style musicals. Soon, many other studios, Warner Brothers amongst them, were opening feature animation divisions to try to follow Disney's playbook. But by the mid-90s, these efforts had failed, and Disney's would-be competitors were beginning to eye the exits. John Lasseter, Pixar's game-changing Toy Story, hadn't yet made 3D CG animation to the industry norm. And that's where we and the Iron Giant arrived in a rare, perfect moment of open-mindedness right before Disney's competitors abandoned the field altogether. Doubt, usually poisonous to the development of new ideas, can, in rare instances, actually create opportunity. If what is being doubted is the status quo itself. In other words, if following the Disney rulebook didn't work, maybe trying something new would. In a landscape filled with G-rated musicals based on familiar tales of talking animals and magic, we would make a PG-rated non-musical based on a reality unfamiliar tale with science fiction elements and Cold War paranoia. To top it off, they would allow me, a first-time feature director, to helm the film on the basis of an unusual pitch. What if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? I was put in the heads of Warner Brothers, then co-heads of production, Lozado di Bonaventura and Billy Gerder, both of whom had plenty of experience in movies, but none to speak of in animation. This was a lucky thing for me, as they judged The Iron Giant not by how well it adhered to feature animation's well-established conventions, but how much it exceeded them as a movie. Warner Brothers decided to close its feature animation division during the Iron Giant's production, but as long as we adhered to our tight budgets and schedule, we were afforded great creative freedom to make the film what we envisioned. I didn't know if I'd ever get this opportunity again, so by God, I was going to make it count. The film became a labour of love for our entire ragtag, scruffy but passionate crew. The studio had been so disappointed by their experience in feature animation that our finished version of The Iron Giant took them by surprise, and they found themselves unprepared to give it the long lead time and careful release it needed. In spite of excellent reviews and sky high exit scores, too few saw The Iron Giant in 1999 to make the film a box office hit. Within weeks, it was out of theatres and gone. Fortunately, time and word of mouth has been kind to The Iron Giant. People who see it seem to urge others to do the same, and the film's reputation has grown with every passing year. To all who've seen The Iron Giant and who've recommended it to others, and to those who are seeing it for the first time, this Blu-ray is for you, Brad Bird. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of this film. I recommend it to every single person that I meet. I tell them, if you have not watched The Iron Giant, you have not lived. You do not understand and appreciate animation if you have not watched this animated movie. It is that good and that worth watching, right? And like I said, if you listen to this now and haven't watched it, listen to my introduction, and before you listen to the review in a minute, jump ship, go find it. I'm sure it's probably on Netflix somewhere or some streaming platform, or go buy it on DVD. Watch it, enjoy it, come back, listen to my review, because I'm going to gush over it like crazy. Trust me, there's going to be a lot of gushing, so get ready. But before we get to that, we've just got to talk about the cast. So you got Eli Nathaniel as Hogarth Hughes, Harry Connick Jr. as Dean McCoppin, Jennifer Aniston as Annie Hughes, Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant, and Christopher McDonald as Kent Mansley. Hate Kent Mansley. Where's the giant, Mansley? Oh, we can duck and cover. There's a show right there. There's no way to survive this. We're all gonna die for our country. Sorry, I went on a bit of a thing there, quoting the movie. Do apologise. Anyway, I love this film. Don't hate me. Anyway, so Brad Bird's pitch. So one thing I want to talk about, because usually I talk about the development of the film, and I will do a little bit, but I want to talk about his pitch. As I mentioned there, the whole idea of this pitch is, what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? That is, in my opinion, one of the best pitches for anything I've ever heard in my life, because there's so much to it, but he says so little. There's so much meaning behind it. Because if you think about it, if you found out that you had the capability to cause destruction and fear and death and so much loss in this world, if you found out that is what you were capable of and that's all you were capable of, would you want to do it? You know, and that's a big question. That's not one to really be asked and to thought about and to be answered straight away. That's one to be really thought about. And it's that thought of like, because we've all seen that slogan, guns don't kill people, people kill people. This is a true fact, because at the end of the day, again, I'm not to get political, but a gun at the end of the day is just a machine. If you pull it on the floor or if you just leave it there, it is going to stay there. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to cause harm to anybody. It is practically safe. It's not until somebody pricks it up and points it at something is that when it becomes a danger. And it's just that idea of, if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun, what would happen? That is a very sort of powerful pitch and very powerful idea. And it does lean in very well to the Iron Giant and to the Iron Man story. Is the fact if he comes down from space, he bumps his head, he forgets who he is, and he learns, kind of like the Terminator, who he is, what it all means to be alive, to have fun. And then when he realizes that he's a gun, he straight away says, I don't want to be a gun. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do anything. I want to be Superman. I want to be a hero. And actually, my screensaver on my phone, when I turn my phone off every single morning, I have the quote. I have a picture on my phone, and at the top you have the Iron Giant with the Superman S on his chest with trees behind him. Underneath is the tagline, "You are who you choose to be," and underneath that, in the ripples of the water underneath the trees, is the shadow of Superman. And it's that quote, "You are who you choose to be," as live with me for the rest of my life. And I'll go into more detail into that when I get to the review. But it's those two things, you know, if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun, what would happen? And you are who you choose to be. You choose. It's your choice. It's not society's choice. It's not your parents' choice. It's not anybody's choice. You choose what kind of person, being, thing, object, individual you are. You choose. You have that choice. It's always been your choice. It always will be. Um, it's very wonderful, beautiful, and I'm jumping ahead already, and I haven't even properly watched the movie and got to the review yet. But I just wanted to have that idea circling around in your heads before we get to the review. Is that tagline, that pitch of what Brad Bird was trying to convey in this movie? Um, so as for the development, in late 1996, while developing the project on its way through, the studio saw the film as a perfect vehicle for Brad Bird, who at the time was working for Turner Feature Animation. Turner Entertainment had recently merged with Warner Brothers' parent company Time Warner, and Bird was allowed to transfer the Warner Brothers Animation Studio to direct The Iron Giant. After reading the original Iron Man book by Hughes, Bird was impressed with the mythology of the story, and in addition was given an unusual amount of creative control by Warner Bros. This creative control involved introducing two new characters not present in the original book, Dean and Kent. Bird's pitch to Warner Bros. Was based around the idea of what if a gun had a soul. Bird decided to have the story set to take place in the 1950s, as he felt the time period, and I quote, presented a wholesome surface, yet beneath the wholesome surface was this incredible paranoia. We were all going to die in a freak out, Bird said. The financial failure of Warner Brothers' previous animation efforts, Quest for Camelot, which I will review, that's a fantastic movie. Yes, it did fail, but it's an underrated animated gem that nobody talks about. So I will talk about Quest for Camelot one day. Anyway, moving on. Whose cost overruns and production nightmares made the company reconsider their commitment to feature animation, helped shape the Iron Giant's production considerably. In a 2003 interview, writer Tim McCallus recalled Quest for Camelot did so badly that everybody backed away from animation and fired people. Suddenly, we had no executive anymore on Giant, which was great because Brad got to make his movie. Because nobody was watching, Giant because nobody was watching, Bird, who regarded Camelot as trying to emulate the Disney style, attributed the creative freedom of the Iron Giant to the bad experience of Quest for Camelot, stating, I caught them at a very strange time, and in many ways a fortunate time. By the time the Iron Giant entered production, Warner Bros. Informed the staff that there would be a smaller budget as well as time frames to get the film completed. However, although the production was watched closely, Bird commented, they did leave us alone if we kept it in control and showed them we were producing the film responsibly and getting it done on time and doing stuff that was good. Bird regarded the trade-off as having 1/3 of the money of a Disney or DreamWorks film and half of the production schedule, but the payoff as having more creative freedom, describing the film as fully made by the animation team. I don't think any other studio can say that to the level that we can. That's for the production of the movie. A lot went into it. The whole sort of the music, the story, the animation. They were left to do it on their own, which again, Brad Bird is right. He was allowed to do whatever he wanted, and he went on after the Iron Giant to make many other films. Like if I just Google Brad Bird now, right? So Brad Bird, as we all know, Brad Bird also did Incredibles as well, which, not to pardon the pun, is incredible. He has done, sorry, blah 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 blah. Go to IMDb. Go to his movies. What movies has he done? I tell you what, I'm just gonna go to Brad Bird movies. Here we go. So Brad Bird films he has done. So in 1999 did The Iron Giant. 2004 he did The Incredibles. 2007 he did Ratatouille. In 2011 he did Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. In 2015 he did Tomorrowland before Disney. And in 2018 he did The Incredibles 2. So he's mostly done a lot of animated films. But Iron Giant, classic, incredible, everybody loves it. Yes, it might have not been successful at the time, but it worked, and it's still loved today. The Incredibles is the exact same. The Incredibles, again, there's a reason why that movie got a sequel. It's because since 2004 that movie came out, everybody was asking for another one. Yes, granted, Incredibles 2 wasn't great and didn't do so well, which, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of Incredibles 2. Um, Even though that is a fact, it still got a sequel because of how good the first movie was. It's the same with Ratatouille. Ratatouille is a fantastic movie. Um, I'm not a really big fan of Mission Impossible, to be honest. So I can't comment on Mission Impossible. Tomorrowland, it didn't do very well, but I quite enjoyed Tomorrowland from 2015. But he's an incredible director. He knows what he's doing, and I can't wait to see whatever he does next. And actually, for a little bit of trivia here, he actually did the voice of Yzma in The Incredibles. I can do a bit of an Yzma. I can do a bit of an Yzma sort of impression. It's not great. Do you remember Thunderhead? Tall, strong, strapping lad, good with kids. April 50th, 1982. I don't remember the full quote. No caps. I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now. But yeah, he does the voice of Yzma. But just before actually, you know what? I'll leave the trivia. I was about to do some trivia, and I was going to spoil some trivia, but now reading the trivia back just quickly, I thought, you know what? I'm going to leave that to the end because even though it kind of deals with something in the production, it's a bit of an interesting bit of trivia, so I'm going to leave it till the end. But that is all she wrote. That is the introduction done. We are finished. It's time to get on to the movie review. I'm really excited. I can't wait. It's going to be fun. I'm smashing my hands like I'm Buddy Gordon Ramsay because I can't wait. So, without further ado, Allons-y. Let's go. So, I've just finished watching The Iron Giant, and this is my moment where I finally get to let loose and to gush over this film. Like I said in the introduction, this is one of my favourite animated movies of all time. And for many reasons, which I hope to get into in the actual meat of the review. But I just love it. It's so fantastically done. It's quick. It's not very long. Um, it's enjoyable. The themes are deep and complex, but what I love about it is the fact of, and I was talking to a friend about this recently, actually, when I told them that I was watching this movie and we had a bit of discussion about it, was the fact of this movie is made for kids, yes, but it doesn't talk down to kids and it doesn't treat them like they're babies. It talks to them, but not down to them. It's very much the fact of these are the subject matters. We all know that you're smart enough to understand them at any level, at any age, and that's enough. Like this movie, I think because look, as I mentioned in the introduction, because this movie had such free reign to basically do whatever they wanted, as long as they were coming into deadlines, as long as they were actually making sure they was actually making a feature film, Warner Brothers let them be. So Brad Bird and the team could basically make a very clever, smart, charming, intelligent, complex movie for children that we just don't really see nowadays. And I'm not saying animation in kids' movie is not good nowadays. It is good, but I don't know. There was just something about the animated movies that I grew up watching. They had such complex themes and such open and honesty about life, about death, about humanity, about good, evil. There was just so many complex themes that it wasn't shoved in my face. It just I understood it when I was younger, and every time I rewatched that movie, the older I got, I understood the movie a lot more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and then, and to the point I get to it now as an adult, and I rewatch it, and I can appreciate it in full. But I'm still learning things. I'm still noticing things. Like prime example, small little detail, but when I watched this movie just for this review, I always thought that the giant gets his bump on his head after he goes to the power grid. So he goes to the power station, gets electrocuted, Hogarth saves him. He basically shorts out, falls down, big crash. I always assumed that is when he lost his memory, that he got the bump on his head, he forgot who he is and his purpose and all that, right? But actually, paying attention to the little bits of details, he'd already had the bump on his head as he was going into the power station to eat it. And I noticed it. I never noticed it before. In my 25 years of watching this movie, or should I say 24, because it came out a year after I was born, um, I never noticed that before. So obviously the bump came from when he first landed on the planet. He first crash landed. He must have hit the rocks. He must have hit the where the lighthouse is or something like that. But hit his head, lost his memory. Boom. Small little detail. Never noticed it before in all the times I've watched this movie. But now I have. I appreciate that little bit, extra bit of detail. It's small things like this, and again, it's as I'll get onto when we're talking about the animation style. It's just something that you can't do these itty bitty small little smart clever details unless you do hand drawn animation, because somebody's actually spent the time to properly draw it and paint it and make it look beautiful, the backgrounds and the characters, that you do get those little extra bits of detail that you do get in CGI movies, and proper full on animated films, kind of like Toy Story and what we get nowadays like Frozen and so. But hand drawn is just, I don't know. For me, it was the pinnacle of animation. It was like the best that they possibly could be, and then they went to full-on 3D animation as it got easier and cheaper to do. Which again, I understand in terms of a budget constraints and wanting to make movies quicker and get them out faster and make more money. I get it, but I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, and more than likely I am. But Studio Ghibli has proved it to everybody, and it's slowly proven it to me that 2D animation mixed in with some CGI, it can work, and it does work. And I haven't watched it, but the new Studio Ghibli movie, which has been blowing up and has everybody gushing over it, is proof. 2D hand drawn movie, but modern, and it works. So it is still possible, but it's just such a clever film. It really, really is. Like this is a movie that I quote all the time with my family. It's a film that I watch religiously at least once a year. I always watch it for my birthday. I have a ritual for my birthday that the last few years actually, that on my birthday, usually all the time I'm on my own. I have the day off, so I spend the morning with a selection of select films from my childhood. It's Iron Giant, The Quest for Camelot, Cats Can't Dance, and How I'm a Fish. I will sit and watch these movies back to back, and it's just a way to, yes, I am a year older, but I'm still a child at heart. It's still a way of kind of keeping myself grounded, keeping my childhood here. Kind of not entirely not being able to let it go, but just having a way of like remembering what it was like to have be carefree and young again. And it's probably a tradition that I'm going to keep going, because we should all keep young at heart. No matter how old we get, we should still keep that young child like mentality, that funness, the wonderment and the enjoyment of the world that we live in, kind of like Robin Williams in a way. So yeah, I absolutely love this film. It is a huge cornerstone of who I am. It is right there with Jack Frost. And the themes that we're going to talk about in this review I would say, are the reason why and who I am today. Is a lot because of this movie, of the themes, of the things that they talk about, the way that we look at life, we look at death, the idea of a soul, the idea of spirituality, which I'm very spiritual now, the light side and the dark side, and the whole sort of idea of you are who you choose to be, you choose. All these sort of ideas, all these quotes, all these thoughts is really made and turned me into the man that I am today at 26 years old. Today, I am here speaking right now, gushing over movies and video games and books because of films like this. So I have to give it to the Iron Giant. If it wasn't for Brad Bird and the team and this movie being made and being made the way it was, and basically all the not consequences, the it starts with a C. I've lost it. Anyway, basically, of all the things coming together that made this movie possible, if it wasn't for this film, I wouldn't be me. So I have to thank it for that. But for this review, The gushing side of it, to get into the technical side now, the more review side, I will be using the book that came with my special edition as my guide slash Bible, because what I found after I did the introduction, I was packing the stuff away, getting it ready. Basically, I didn't feel like I was going to need it. I sat and Richie read this book. It's only a small book. It's probably about 30 or so pages. It's called The Evolution of the Iron Giant. And I haven't read it since I bought the collector's edition because I keep it in the box and I have it just on the side. And I started to flick through and I noticed that there are things in here, the extra bits of detail, bits of behind the scenes stuff, quotes from Brad Bird himself and quotes from the team. And I just thought it'd be quite good to use that as kind of a help, as a guide of how best to shape this review. Because I could easily talk about it off my own thoughts and feelings, but having those personal sort of exclusive quotes would be kind of an interesting insight. So I thought so. That is kind of what I'll be using as my guide through this adventure into the Iron Giant. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the themes of the movie. As I mentioned, as I was gushing, this movie is made for kids, yes, but it tells the story of light and the dark within. Basically, the idea of we all have light inside of us, that we're all capable of good, we're all capable of doing the right thing, but we also have the dark side in us that sort of provide like takes us in a direction where we might do harm or we might do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. At the end of the day, when it comes to life, where there is good, there is evil. Where there is light, there is darkness. Everybody has a bit of every bit of both. But again, it comes back to that quote: "You are who you choose to be." You choose. You have the sort of ability within yourself to choose: will I follow the light or will I follow the dark? And this is that kind of story that this film tries to tell, where the giant being the light and Mansley being the dark, where the giant himself he's a gun. He's realized he doesn't know who he is. He realizes that he's a weapon and he doesn't want to be a weapon. He wants to be a good. He wants to be a hero. He wants to be Superman. So throughout this movie, through the help of Hogarth, he transitions on a path to be like, I'm going to be the good. I'm not going to be bad. I'm not going to be what I was programmed to be. It's a wonderful story. The flip side, you have Mansley. Mansley, he is basically the pinnacle of what humanity was like during the 50s. Skeptical of everything, scared of anything that was different. Obviously, the whole idea of the movie being set in the 50s and communism and Soviet Union and Sputnik and the space race, Cold War, also that. So it's kind of an algorithm of what the dark side of humanity was of the time, and even you could say today, of being sort of estranged and didn't like anything that was different, that wasn't sort of quote unquote the right way. And you do get the two different archetypes in this film. You get the light side of the giant and the dark of Mansley, and it does pay off in the end, where the giant, again, bit of spoilers if you haven't seen it. Again, I should have said that at the beginning. If you haven't seen this movie, please go watch it now because I'm about to drop a huge spoiler. You've got 3 seconds. One, two, three. Right, so you've been warned. When the giant, the good side, he decides that I'm going to be the hero and he sacrifices himself and launches himself into the air and has a mid-air collision with the nuke and saves the town of Rockwell. On the flip side, you have Mansley, who was sort of realized that he's in the wrong. Everybody's turned against him. He's got this huge anger and greed and sort of wanting to be right and wanting to basically get revenge on the giant and on Hogarth. That he goes, launch the missile now. And that's when the general's like, do you understand what you've just done? That missile is targeted to the giant's current position. Where is the giant, Mansley? And he realizes, and oh, crap. So you have the light side and dark side. And that's the kind of the story, the theme of this movie, of what it's trying to tell, as well as also touching on the idea of love, the idea of death, the idea of honor, spirituality, humanity. For example, like we first get to see it when the giant and Hogarth, they're going through the woods and they see a deer. And it's the first time the Iron Giant has actually seen, if anything, you could say a proper living creature apart from the sailor when he first crash lands and Hogarth. First time he's actually seen anything else that isn't Hogarth or Dean. and because he doesn't smell human, because he's not a danger, the deer comes over to him and he sniffs his hand. It's a beautifully animated and wonderful scene. And then the deer goes off, and Hogarth goes, "Well, he just ran." And before he could finish, they hear a shot. They look around, panicky. They look over, and they see that hunters have now shot that deer. And the hunters run away because they see the giant. He runs down and he starts to poke it, and he kind of looks at Hogarth of like, what's happened? And Hogarth explains to him, it's dead. They shot him with that gun. And he looks at the gun, and this is where his weapon side of him starts to come out, and he starts to sort of change, but he kind of wakes up, oh no, and he goes, but why did it die? And Hogarth just goes, that's just happens. Sometimes things die, and you have sort of that moment where he pokes the body, and Hogarth's like, don't do that. It's dead. It's that idea of you got to respect the dead. And it's a wonderful scene. It's so sad, and again, it's one of them scenes that kind of make me cry, and it's the scene that comes after it as well that makes me cry. There's a quote here in the book that I want to read. Where is it? Here. I did put notes in here so that I could make sure I have it right. Here we go. Brad Bird quote. So this is a quote from Brad Bird about it. I think people connect to the idea that we all have dark and light sides within ourselves, and that our lives are defined by which side we act on. So it's the idea of that, like I mentioned, we all have light and dark. We just have a choice of like within ourselves, what defines us as who we are is which side we decide to use. Do we decide to be the villain? Do we decide to basically, how can I explain it? Do we decide to be the good guy, the hero, or do we decide to be the villain? And it's a powerful message to really tell kids at a young age of like, you have the right in your life to choose where you go in your life, but just make sure the choice that you choose is the right choice for you and is the right choice for others. It's a very powerful statement to make. There's also a bit in the book that I love. It goes, love, death, honor, and spirituality. These seem like heavy topics for an animated feature, but the Iron Giant presents these and other seemingly adult concepts in a medium typically targeted at kids. According to Bird, however, animation has no boundaries, and he said, it's not a genre, it's an art from which that can do any genre, and it's been limited by people's perceptions, but I think it can tell any story there is. In fact, Bird purposely set out to make a film that appeals to all ages. When the giant witnesses hunters killing a deer, he gets his first glimpse of death. With the simplicity and honesty of a child, Hogarth tries to teach the giant what it means to die, and more importantly, what it means to live. Bird recounted a moment from the production during which some of the crew were watching a rough version of the scene in which Hogarth explains souls to the Iron Giant, as he lies on the junkyard cars and other machines in the scrapyard. As they watched, people began crying. Bird said it was pivotal. These were an undeniable feeling that we were all tapping into something powerful. Which it was. It's a very powerful scene. You can see that there's angst in the giant. Like he's trying to figure out what it is about life, about death. Again, he's got that innocence of a child. He's still learning it all. And Hogarth comes over and he says, I know you're upset about the deer, but that's just what happens. Things die, but it's not the end. We'll have a soul. And the sort of Iron Giant asks him what a soul is. And Hogarth sort of tells him. But then the giant goes, do I have a soul? And then Hogarth says, you have feelings, you think about things, so that means that you have a soul, and souls don't die. And then the giant goes, a soul. And then then Hogarth says, Mum says it's something inside all good things, and it goes on forever and ever. Now that stuck with me for the rest of my life. That idea of souls, and that death is not the end. Like, I'm a big proponent of spirituality and reincarnation, and that humans are energy, and that in life we create this energy which we call a soul, and that when we die, we all know from science fact that you can't destroy energy, you can only create energy. So once energy has been created, you can't destroy it, it will always exist. So I'd like to think that when I die and when the people listening here, we all die, that we go off where, I don't know. I'm not a very religious person, but our energy lives on, our soul lives on, and from this movie, it's been something that really sat with me when I was younger, and it's not until the older I've got and the more I watch this movie that that idea and that concept has really sort of digested and really grew within me as to the idea of what a soul is and what it means to be human and what it means to be alive. So it's a very wonderful and important question to ask, and to sort of present to children at a very young age. So the themes of this movie are very powerful. Like there's so much more I can say, but that is the overarching sort of feeling of this film. It's just the fact of doing the right thing, the light and the dark, of choosing what is right for you as a person, but also making sure that you just be true to yourself, and that we'll have a soul, and that life isn't the end, that there will be another adventure. Whatever that may be, there is always something else. So enjoy life while you can, and then hopefully the next life will be just as enjoyable. Again, very powerful, very wonderful statement. As for sort of the animation style, the animation style, again, like I mentioned, it's hand drawn animation. It's my favorite. Maybe because I'm biased and I grew up with it. That's a fair sort of comment to make. But I just feel watching, because I've got the Blu-ray version of this film. I think I posted it on Twitter yesterday. So if you go to my Twitter, you'll see the Blu-ray version of the film. Granted, I watched the Blu-ray version. It's high quality. I've got a 4K TV, so it's upscaled. But even so, that doesn't hinder it. If anything, it just makes it a lot more clearer, a lot more sharper, and it makes sort of, you can see the edges of the pencils of the artist and the colours a lot more vivid. And if anything, the movie pops a lot more because I watched it in Blu-ray than it did when I first watched it on home video. And then eventually I got a DVD version of it, and then I grew up as an adult and I got the Blu-ray, obviously. And the animation style is gorgeous. It's very 50s. If anything, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that you could say looks like. Again, I don't live in America, but you know, we've all more than likely have seen them. We've seen posters of America in the 50s. For like soup cans and adverts and their TV shows and the way that their cars were designed and all that. So every sort of scene looks like a poster for a 50s American 50s sort of noir. I love it for that. I love the style from the American 50s. I even style my hair like a 50s 60s sort of greaser jock. Don't ask me why. I just really like the hairstyles back then. So I'm very much in tune and in love with that time period, especially for the fashion and for the way people dressed and looked and the way everything just looked very sort of. Probably the reason why I like Fallout so much is not just for the music, but also just for the style. I just love how everything looks, that futuristic sort of look of everything. I look the space age. That's the best word to use. So the animation style 2D looks amazing. The setting is incredibly done. One thing that I really love is the whole sort of the way that they design the Iron Giant. There's a thing in the book that I'm going to quote now that goes into more about how they design the Iron Giant. So, the retro look of the titular character began with the initial designs from one of Bird's close friends, director Joe Johnston, who also directed The Rocketeer and Captain America: The First Avenger. Johnson was inspired by the look of Art Deco trains of the 1930s. Other artists then refined the design, and the team had its giant. So that's why the giant looks a bit trainy. Which I always thought when I first watched it when I was younger, that the train that crashes into the Iron Giant looks very similar. The front of the train looks very similar to the giant, and that sort of little nugget of information didn't really ring true to me until I got a bit older. And I was like, oh yeah, it actually does. And when I read this, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So maybe, I don't know if it was, but maybe it was a callback to them. Bird then goes on. Bird felt using CG would make the giant look out of place against the warm and cozy look of the film's quaint 1950s coastal New England setting. Still, he didn't want the Iron Giant to stand out from the rest of the animation too much, so his team created software to give the animation lines of the characters slight imperfections to make them match the handmade quality of the rest of the film. Next page. One other way Bird countered filmmaking techniques of the time was how he worked with his animation team. Though directors typically assigned animators to certain characters, Bird assigned his animators scenes, regardless of which character was in them, to play to their individual strengths with tone and emotion. This harkened back to the way Bird's animation mentors, several of Walt Disney's legendary Nine Old Men, worked on the Disney classics of Bird's youth. Bird insisted on shooting the film in the CinemaScope ratio, despite warnings that a story about something so vertical, i.e. the giant, should not be shot with such a wide format. But he thought the perspective would immerse viewers in the story and stay true to the feel of the films made in the 1950s, which the story takes place. So there was a lot of thought that went into the animation style, and like I said, it shows, not just for the fact of how beautiful it looks and how perfect the whole 1950s art decor is, but also the fact of Bird actually got his animators individually, no matter if you were working on certain characters or scenes. I want the animation team to work on backgrounds, to focus on the backgrounds, to put their art and love into each one of them. And again, it harkens back to what I've said in many other times I've reviewed an animated movie. No matter how beautiful Frozen looks or how gorgeous the new Pixar movie looks, to me, hand-drawn will always be the best because you have the human element. These movies are timeless because they're hand-drawn. Somebody spent hours and hours in a day just painstakingly, beautifully putting their heart and soul into a background, into making it pop. One of my favourite 2D hand-drawn animated movies is Beauty and the Beast. Reason being, if you've watched that movie, it's all hand-drawn. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's stunning. It's top of the line. One of the best Disney movies. And the reason being is because not just the story, but because how beautiful it is. And its setting is wonderful. And they really nailed it here with The Iron Giant. And it's not just that. The music. You didn't think I was going to go another review without talking about music. A guy that has no music qualifications but loves to talk about the music in movies and games anyway. But again, the music helps with this film a lot because they use a lot of songs and tunes from the 50s anyway. So you already have that 50s decor, that 50s theme, the 50s mentality of the Cold War, and Kit Mansley being sort of a spook. And then you have sort of the space age side of the Iron Giant and aliens and Invaders from Mars and Sputnik and all that jazz. So you already have that going for it. Then you add on the jazz. Then you add on the 50s vibe and the feel of it. And it all just, it's just like a warm blanket of just, it just feels, it feels so spicy. It feels so good. It just feels, it makes me, I don't know, I just feel good. I just feel warm. I feel great. Everything about it just pops. And if it wasn't for the music, the movie would still be great, but there would just be always something that missed. There would always just be something missing. No matter what, something just feels off. You just can't get your words out. It just feels a bit meh, a bit like, it was good, but there was, But because music exists, and we're so lucky that music exists, and we have such wonderful composers, that this film just pops. And everything about it, about the animation style works, and that the music hits at the right time. It's beautiful and jolly and wonderful when it needs to be. It's very 50s when it needs to be. Then it's very somber and very sort of sad and thought-provoking when it needs to be, in those moments where Hogarth is talking about souls, or the giant sees the dead deer, or when the giant sacrifices himself, or even when the giant is being attacked. It's like going on an adventure, kind of very much of like when he learns he can fly, for example, and it turns very sort of Superman-y, and it's like, wow, you feel like when you first watched Superman the movie and you first watched him take off and fly, it was like, oh my god, it's very punchy. I wish I had a degree in music so I better could articulate what I'm trying to say, but it's just so well done here, and I love it. I love it for that. So I had to give it a special mention. Next thing I want to talk about is the dream sequence. So if you watch the original version of this movie in theaters, or if you watched it on video or DVD, you don't have this scene, so you probably haven't seen it. I think the scene is actually online. So if you want to watch it, you probably can watch it online, or buy the Blu-ray version of the film. But there is a dream sequence that was added into the Blu-ray version of the signature edition that I have, and what it is that the giant. So after Hogarth has talked about souls, the giant is lying on his own in the junkyard, and he's dreaming, and he basically has sort of flashbacks, and the camera pulls out, and it's a scene where Dean is asleep and his TV is on, and obviously the giant is somehow connected to the TV. So as he's having dreams, the TV's flickering, and what the giant sees is projected onto the TV. And what he sees is very interesting, and if anything, in my opinion, improves the story, because what he dreams about after he has flashbacks of the deer being killed, the deer dies, but then all the surroundings starts to fire, and then you're brought back, and then you see like an alien world, a planet, a city, and there's planets in the background, and then there's huge sort of meteors coming down. Obviously, they're not meteors; they're other iron giants, and the giant looks around, and there are other iron giants around him, other soldiers, army, whatever, we don't really know. And then he looks down into a pool of water, and he sees his reflection in this pool. And then it cuts back, and then you hear Hogarth in the background goes, "You'd never hurt me, will you?" And then it's that image of a planet just being obliterated, blowing up, just destroyed, absolutely destroyed. And then Dean, obviously, he's woken up at this point because he hears sort of noises, and then he sees the TV, he sees the explosion, and then all of a sudden the Iron Giant wakes up from this nightmare, like panicky, and then he goes back to sleep. And just as he rests down and stops moving, Dean turns around to look at him, and it's kind of that fact of what the hell did I just see? What was that? And it also kind of makes sense to why Dean sort of so quickly mistrusts the Iron Giant later on in the scene, where Hogarth and the Giant are sort of play acting, and Hogarth gets the sort of pretend laser gun, fires at him, and straight away his reaction is gun, shoot. And that's why he's like, "Oh my God, you almost did that to Hogarth." And then the Giant's like, "I'm not a gun," and that leads into the end. But it really improves it for two reasons. One, obviously, as I mentioned, it kind of adds more weight to the idea of why Dean all of a sudden straight away doesn't trust the Giant, of like, he could be anything, you don't know where he's from, blah blah blah. So it adds strength to that. But two is the fact of, I don't want to know who the Iron Giant is and where the Iron Giant comes from. I know it sounds contradictory, but bear with me. I don't want to know any of that. And this dream sequence doesn't give you that. All the dream sequence does, it just shows you that he is a weapon, and that he has sort of, he's from somewhere unknown, and that he was sent here. Now, does that mean that he was a scout, and that there are other sort of Iron Giants coming here to sort of, like, it's kind of like he's like the first protocol to come in, cause a bit of destruction, then they come in later, or not? Or did he run away? Again, these are all questions that, after watching it, it makes you think. But again, it's not important. But the reason it's so powerful, and the reason why it improves the story, is because, to me personally, again, this is my own headcanon, and again, you could watch this and think differently, but to me, what it tells me is the fact of the Iron Giant, he was destroying planets, or maybe he only destroyed the one planet. He realized after looking at his reflection that who he was and what he was doing, and I'd like to think that he ran away. He ran away, and he crash landed on Earth, and perfectly, wonderfully for him, he crash landed, bumped his head, kind of very much Born Identity style. Forgot who he is, forgot his purpose and what he did in his past, and he has a new opportunity to start again. That's my headcanon. I don't know. But that's what I like, is the fact of it improves it for me, because it improves the idea of, like, he ran away, that he didn't want to be a gun, and that he didn't always want to be a gun. And it wasn't just meeting Hogarth that did that. Maybe, you could say it maybe ruins the whole point of Hogarth teaching him how good and evil. Who knows? But that's my headcanon. But I think the scene improves it. So whenever I watch this movie, I always watch the signature edition, because I just love that added scene. You also get an added scene as well, where you get Dean and Annie, Hogarth's mum. They have a little scene together where they're talking about Hogarth being like, he's lonely, he's misunderstood, but he's a good kid. It's a small scene, but it adds a little bit more to the sort of, you get a bit more of Dean, you get a bit more of Annie, and kind of understand as to why Dean is a lot more willing to work with him and try to befriend him because again he's lonely. He's found a friend. He wants to help him. He wants to be there for him. He's trying to be a good bloke because Dean is a good bloke. He even has that quote. If we don't stick up for the kooks, who will? And it's true. If you don't stick up for this little person, the crazy person, the person that everybody's bullying, who's going to? So that already does a staple of he's a good person and that he's just trying to be there for somebody who is lonely, who is, i.e., in this story, Hogarth. So the added dream sequence perfectly improves the story, in my opinion. Now we're getting close to the end now, or as I like to call it, the final resolve, the battle between good and evil. And there's this. After we have the scene where Hogarth and the giant are play fighting, and he accidentally triggers his defense mechanism, and accidentally attacks Hogarth. The giant runs away. He takes off the Superman logo on his chest. He's like, "I'm not worthy," sort of thing, and he walks off in the snow. And it's a beautifully animated scene. But this is at this point in the movie is where the tears just start to roll down my face, and they do not stop until the movie ends. He's walking off in the snow. Beautifully done, and you have the sort of the Superman logo. He's dropped that on the floor. He's walking off, and there's this scene where he's just walking, and these two lads are on this tower, and they can see the army. Then they see the giant. He goes, where? And they fall off the tower, and they're hanging off by a rope. And I love this scene. It's a perfect bit of scene, not just an animation, just perfect bit of like the action shot in any sort of movie. But it's just a scene where the giant's walking away. He hears the scream, and his head just whips around, turns, and it's that sort of like big sort of look on his face. And they're like, "Help, help, help!" And then they start to fall, and he just runs, goes on his stomach, puts his hand out, and catches them in the air and saves their lives. And it's from that moment onwards that I'm in tears because he's finally been like, "Look, I choose to be a hero. I choose to be Superman, a good person, a good guy." And I'm probably going to get emotional here, and if I do, I apologise. And then Hogarth sort of catches up with him with Dean, and he looks at him, and the Iron Giant looks at Hogarth and smiles and goes, "I am not a gun. I'm a hero. I'm Superman. I'm good. I've chosen." Sadly, then they get attacked by the army because Kit, being Kit, the dark side of humanity, sees it, goes, "Oh god, the giant's attacking the town," completely doesn't know what's going on, just jumps to the worst conclusion. The army comes in, starts attacking him, so he's like, "I gotta get out of it. I've got to get away from the town because if I stay here, people are gonna get hurt." So he picks up Hogarth, he legs it, runs. And like Dean says to Kit, he goes, "Look, he's got the kid, don't shoot. It's a defense mechanism. If you don't shoot him, he's harmless. Simple as that." Kit, being Kit, is like, "Okay, I'll tell the general." Basically lies to the general, said the giants killed the kid, we got to kill him. Obviously the general doesn't know any different, so the general's like, "All right, assemble all troops, we're taking this guy down." There's this moment where they're running and they're getting hit by tanks, and then the giant, he's running, he's trying to get away from the planes, just dodges a school bus, falls off a cliff, and then he as he's falling, which again, beautifully animated scene, he sensors appear and he can fly now. And he's like, "Hogarth, so you can fly like Superman." He goes up and he goes, "Put your arms like Superman." It's and the orchestral music comes in and it's beautiful and I'm crying my eyes out. And they're flying, and then you got these sort of, I think, not MiGs because MiGs were Russian. Basically, the American fighters were coming in, shooting him, and he's targeting systems, like trying to target him, and he covers his head. He's like, "No," and he puts his arm out. And he flies like Superman. I'm going to get emotional now. I can hear it in my voice. Ugh. And he's flying like Superman. And he decides he's not going to. That's not who he is now. And he tries to outmaneuver them. He's flying. They send a missile. He gets them unawares, and they fall out the sky. He hits the ground. And he gets up, and he sees Hogarth on the ground, not moving. And he goes to touch him. But then, again, it's not like straight away, it's like it's not obvious, but it's very much the fact of, if you remember the scene where with the deer, where he touches the deer and Hogarth says, "Don't do that." It's the same movie, same sort of allegory, really. It's that same thing of like, same moment of, he goes to touch Hogarth, realizes he's not moving, moves his hand away, and he's upset. He's generally, we're not crying, but yeah, in the stance of emotionally angry, crying, upset, proper distraught that his best friend is now dead, and then the army comes up behind him, shoots him, and he just snaps. He loses it, and and it's also an allegory to show it's so easy to jump to the dark side. It's so easy of one bad day, as the Joker would say. All you need is one bad day to turn a good man evil, to a good man bad, and this was that moment where he finally got to the point where he was accepted and that he was beloved and people weren't scared of him, that he was going to be a hero. His best friends died, and he snaps, and he's like, "You want me to be a gun? I'll be a gun. Let's go." Like, and he does. He turns in, he transforms, which is again awesome scene, and he goes off and he just takes on the army and he follows them towards the town. Um, uh, Annie and Dean, they come in, get Hogarth, they try to take him back to town, take him to hospital, and they get back to town. Hogarth's like, um, "We gotta go back get him." He's like, "No, you're lucky to be alive. You can have concussions, so we gotta get you to hospital." They're stopped by the army. They all get out of the car. Hogarth just hightails it down the main high street towards the giant because he's about to, like, if anything, nuke a battleship because it shot him. And in a proper badass moment, runs underneath the legs of the giant, right in front of him. And where is it? I've actually got the quote right here in the book. Here it is. Like, here we go. Here it is. Yeah, here we go. He goes. Then he looks at him. He goes, "It's bad to kill. Guns kill, and you don't have to be a gun. You are who you choose to be. You choose. Choose." And it's that moment of he realizes Hogarth's alive, and he makes that choice, and instantly he just changes, and it's this moment on his face that you can never forget. This moment where, as he sort of turns back into being the giant, with all the weapons turn off, it's like, that sort of panic on his face, like, "What have I done? I'm so sorry." Sort of like, I didn't mean to do it. And then Hogarth's like, it's okay. We've got to show them you're good, and they do. And it's that wonderful scene where they walk up, and then you have the whole moment of sort of Manzi realizes that he screwed it, he's lost it, he's stuffed it, and that he gets mad. He goes, "Launch the missile now!" And then the sad moments where the giant realizes what he must do, of like, I can fix this. And he looks up, and it makes me cry because he looks down to Hogarth, and he goes, "You go, no, I go, you stay, no following." And he steps back, he jumps up like Superman, arms stretched out, um, and then Hogarth goes, "I love you." Wonderful, heartbreaking scene. And as it's getting closer, the music is getting more epic, and you hear it like in his head of like, "You are who you choose to be," Hogarth saying. And then he smiles, he closes his eyes, and he goes, "Superman." And oh god, I'm already crying. And then the nuke hits him, big explosion, sad, and I was like, this just gets me, absolutely gets me each time. I'm going to read from the book now because so hopefully that'll stop me from crying. So if you were to ask me which part of the film I enjoyed directing the most, this is from Brad Bird, it would be the last 20 minutes because the mood swings wildly between sad and happy, explosively exhilarating and quietly moving, and seems to do so very efficiently. A lot of films have good setups, but many fail to close the deal at their conclusion. I'm very proud of the fact that we closed the deal. The film's final act delivers on the general paranoia of the 1950s, which also stayed true to the deeply personal story of love and friendship between Hogarth and the armed giant. As the weaponized robot lays waste to the army tanks and guns sent to defeat him, it is Hogarth who confronts him, changing him to find the light within him, to reach the conclusion he knows is right. Bird made sure the transition from the heartfelt story of an unusual friendship to a full-tilt alien invasion film came off seamlessly. When Kent blinds hatred and quests to stop the menace at all costs, and he destroys the entire town, the Iron Giant finally chooses to be what he wants to be, a hero. And then there's a wonderful quote here by Brad Bird that goes, "We all have power to affect those around us, and that can be either destructive or an uplifting thing," which is absolutely wonderful. And then finally, things fall into place. The filmmaker set out to answer a tough question: what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? That interaction of technology and spirituality is the heartbeat of the story. Bird didn't just ask studio executives that question, he asked each of us. Then he and his team showed us that by choosing the light, choosing to be a hero rather than a gun, the Iron Giant affected others in an uplifting and positive way. Hogarth has new friends, Annie and Dean find love, and the town remembers the towering automaton the way he wanted to be seen. And that kind of power, that kind of heroism lies within us all. And it is, and it does, because lives are changed. The town of Rockwell's better for it. They remember the Iron Giant that saved them. Hogarth now has friends. You know, he's not alone anymore. Dean and Annie get together. They find love, which is wonderful. And Hogarth is presented a gift, which is all they have left is this bolt. That's it. That's all that was left of what they could recover of the Iron Giant. And it cuts back now. He's lying in bed, and then he hears a thump, and then you hear the beep, beep, and that's a signal to you, the viewer, the audience, as well as Hogarth, that the Iron Giant isn't dead, that he's still alive, that he survived. And Hogarth goes over to the window because it's tapping at the window, wanting to leave to get to the Iron Giant. He lifts the window, the screw goes out, and he goes, "See you later," and it goes off. And then we cut to an icy scene in Iceland, which is funny because Iceland is green and Greenland is ice. Anyway, not the point. A white scene in Iceland, and it rolling hills. You can see the bits moving towards it, and there's just a head smiling. And for me, my overall final thoughts is this movie doesn't need a sequel. I know it kind of, you could say it sets up for a sequel, and part of me would like one if Brad Bird and the same art team and that come together and make it. But I don't want one. I don't need one, because the movie is so perfectly story told that I don't feel like there would need to be a sequel. It works perfectly as a one and done movie, and it's just nice to know at the very end the giant is still alive. So in your mind, that even though we don't get to see it in a sequel film, your mind is set free to wander, to set free to know that whatever comes next, something happens, and it's lovely. And then the Iron Giant can now choose to be the hero that he wants to be Superman, to be the best he could possibly be. And like I said, my overall final thoughts of this film is that I love it. It's the best animated movie I've ever watched. And if you haven't seen this movie, please go watch it. If you're listening now and you haven't seen it, I'm sorry that I spoiled it for you, but trust me, you will still enjoy it. You really, really will. It is that good of a film. It is the pinnacle of not just 2D animation, but it's the pinnacle of storytelling, and it's the pinnacle of animation in general. Again, in my opinion, it is just the best. But before I wrap up, I've got some trivia. So, bit of trivia for you. So, Brad Bird was in part inspired to make this film as a memorial to his sister Susan, who died at the hands of her estranged husband by gun violence. His pitch was this: what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? So, it was inspired to make this film as a memorial to his sister, which I thought it was kind of really, really lovely to his sister, and which also makes sense as why he tried to tell that story and why to push that angle so much of like, well, what if a gun decided that it was a gun and didn't want to be a gun and didn't want to take a life, you know? So it's a very, it just, to me, that bit of trivia just makes this movie a bit more gut punching, a bit more powerful than it already is. They have another one that goes, Brad Bird personally animated the scene where Hogarth rants to Dean about his problems in a super fast-paced after he gives him espresso, because the character is talking and moving about so rapidly. Bird had to actually draw at least some part of every in-between the frames in an animated film between the key frames. The scene where the giant's hand was in the living room watching a Maypo cereal advert was changed in the signature edition to an advert for the Disneyland attraction Tomorrowland, which it was. In my edition, Brad Bird had originally wanted the Tomorrowland advert in the film as a homage to his mentors, but Disney would not give him clearance to use it. But Bird did end up directing the film Tomorrowland: A World Beyond in 2015. Anyway, so it's swings and roundabouts. But yeah, absolutely wonderful movie. I love this film to death. Like I said, if you haven't watched it, do yourself a favour. Go watch it. generally incredible. I don't feel like I've done it any justice at this point, really. I feel like the best way that you can do yourself justice is just to watch it. You know, so yeah, that is all she wrote. That is the end of the review. This is the part where I ask you all very, very kindly to, if you haven't yet, to if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you've been kept up to date whenever I release a new episode here on YouTube. Also, if you listen on Spotify, please give me a rating if you haven't as of yet. That'll help me immensely. You can also find me at Nerdstalgic_pod on Twitter to get up to date on everything and anything that I am doing. I'm still going to be taking my break for a while because I'm still in the midst of writing. But again, if I hit another milestone, then there'll be another episode. But I do look forward to coming back. I do miss podcasting a lot. I really, really enjoy this. And it's not until you take a break from something that you enjoy that you realize how much you enjoyed and how much it means to you. And I miss it so much. I really, really do. So it was a pleasure to talk to you today on my birthday for one of my favorite movies of all time. It was an absolute pleasure to just gush over the things that we love and enjoy. And it is an absolute pleasure to be your host this evening, all day, all morning, or night. It depends on where you are in the world, listen to it at the moment. But it is an absolute pleasure, and I thank you all very, very much for listening. I have been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.